everybody, and welcome back to this week's edition of the Roundup. I'm Griff McClellan. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Bo Smith. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Not bad. It's good to be back in the studio.
Yes, it is.
Let's start this discussion by diving into the World Series that recently concluded this weekend, with the Houston Astros winning their second overall World Series championship. However, their first clean title following 2017.
Yeah, their first clean one, considering by a lot of people. So I think it's kind of insane. But, they were arguably the best team this season. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. At least in the American League, we weren't sure if they were the best, considering that the Dodgers had a record-setting season. Obviously, they collapsed in the postseason, so Houston was clearly the best team remaining.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, Philadelphia had an incredible run for the ages. They were the first such sixth seed to make the World Series.
Considering this is the new playoff format for the MLB.
Exactly.
First ever, and they're the first to do it.
Exactly. The fact that they took advantage of that opportunity in the first year of existence is really remarkable. And overall, throughout the series, Philadelphia looked really great early on. They had an impressive comeback win in Game 1.
Oh, yeah.
A couple games later, they had a dominant home run game. They hit 5 home runs off Lance McCullers Jr. In Game 3. So clearly, they started off hot and they had their moment in the spotlight. But clearly, Houston was by far the better team. And not to boast, but I actually called it. I said Houston in 6. So I think a lot of MLB fans thought the same thing. Philadelphia would maybe get a game or two.
Oh, yeah.
But ultimately, Houston was the better team. They were going to clinch it at home.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement. It's kind of hard to beat a team like Houston that wins over 100 games in a season. Then when you're Philly, you kind of just squeak in, and you get in because of the new playoff format. Because if this was still under the old format, they're not getting in. I think that's very much agreeable upon. They weren't there. They're the dead last seed, and they had their own mountain to climb too, which for Philly this is impressive. And I think they'll be back next season. I think they'll be a higher seed, but I think next season's baseball is going to be just as great.
Absolutely. And Philadelphia was in a very tough division. They finished 3rd. The other two teams had over 100 wins, Atlanta and New York. I think Philadelphia will be back. I agree with you. They're really young, exciting, very, very talented team. They'll certainly be back. Bryce Harper will lead the way, and this loss will actually help them. In a way, it's a blessing in disguise.
They're going to grow from it.
Absolutely. Just think about this. Had they won it this year when nobody saw that coming, how are they going to ever live up to that same expectation after this?
How will the Eagles live up to that expectation?
True. Philadelphia's had a very, very interesting round of sports lately.
Oh, no doubt. No
They've
doubt.
experienced every emotion, seeing Phillies lose the World Series, and now the Eagles remaining undefeated.
Oh, yeah. That one's interesting as well.
For sure. And while we're on the topic of the World Series, I got to say the defining moment has to be Yordan Alvarez's massive 450 moonshot in Game 6 at home, 3-run shot, put Houston in the lead for good.
He got a hold of that ball. He crushed it. I think I saw the pitch. It was like a 99-mile-per-hour pitch, and he just got a hold of it, and he just took off with it.
Oh, yeah. Just in that whole environment of being at home and hitting the home run of your life and sealing the deal for your team, that's really remarkable, and it's so surreal. Not only for Yordan Alvarez and the whole Houston Astros, but also how about their manager, Dusty Baker?
Oh, my goodness. 25 seasons, 4,000-plus games, and his first ring as a manager. That's insane. I mean, he played baseball, too, didn't he? He played a lot of baseball.
He did. He won one ring in his career at 1981 with the LA Dodgers.
Yes.
And that was his only ring as a player. But ever since he became a manager in the early 90s, he's been successful with so many teams, but never had a World Series ring to show for it until this past Saturday night when he finally got to experience, again, that surreal emotion and feeling of climbing the mountaintop.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a sign of, it's almost kind of like Andy Reid in comparison. You know, it took Andy Reid several seasons from Philadelphia to Kansas City to finally get that elusive ring he had. Great coach, great with quarterbacks. I mean, you finally get it. You're just happy for the man.
Absolutely. And Houston obviously was down early in the series. They came back. And one thing we can't forget to mention is their historic no-hitter in Game 4. A combined no-hitter, only the second no-hitter in World Series history. The most recent one coming in 1956 with Don Larson's perfect game, the only perfect game in postseason history.
That's insane to me.
Yeah, it's certainly the turning point of the series. Because at that point, after Philadelphia had started out red hot, they kind of just hit a brick wall and The series was history.
Oh yeah, this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon when it comes to games like this in Game 7. Baseball, any form of sports wise, you just get there. It's just like it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. You got to take it slow as you can. And I think Philly just kind of got it way too quick.
Exactly. Not only is that relevant in the postseason, it's relevant in the entire season. I mean, you play 162 games. MLB is all about endurance.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Pecans are staple to Oklahoma. In fact, many of our native pecans come from trees that are older than Oklahoma statehood.
My father's the one that got us started into the pecan picking. I was probably 10 or 12 years old, and we started off with one little mechanical picker that you pulled behind a four-wheeler. Then we'd go home at night and we'd clean them on a TV tray. I guess watching my dad work hard when we were young, and people started trusting him and getting more and more groves, we just kept growing.
Being a relatively new and fresh company, we get to sit in the same room with people who have been a part of the Oklahoma economy for decades.
It's opened a lot of doors. It's gave us quite a bit of exposure, and I think people, will take a small company like us a little more serious. We're just going to continue growing as long as our community lets us and our customers keep on buying, and we'll see where it takes us.
Over the years, we kind of realized that you can get ribs anywhere, you can get a steak anywhere, but you can't always get a Mountain View hot link like ours. So we really decided to focus on that niche and realized we had something really special. So that's when we started focusing more on the hot links, but it's still the same family recipe they were making all those years ago. For us, many of our people that work here have been with us for years and decades. So whereas machines kind of break down over time, the people just get better. And it shows in the products we produce. When you buy a Mountain View product, not only is it going to taste dynamite, but you're also feeding Oklahomans. You're helping employ Oklahomans, and you're helping to fund the state's economy. So what's better than that?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Roundup. I'm Griff McClellan. Let's shift gears and go into the NFL season. Let's continue discussing the city of Philadelphia. Let's move over to the Eagles now. They're still undefeated. They're now 8-0.
It's impressive to me that the Eagles are undefeated, and it's not like they've had the hardest schedule, but it's not like they've had the easiest one either. Like week 2, they had the Vikings. You've already beaten the Cowboys once. You've already rolled that way, and then now you're coming up to the Commanders. I mean, realistically, it's possible they could finish this season undefeated.
Do you think they will? 17-0 has obviously never happened with this format in the NFL schedule, but it could happen this year.
I got to say no. I think there's always that slip up there. I think if you clinch it, you kind of sit your starters, don't risk anybody getting hurt. You're always going to make sure none of your starters get hurt, obviously, but if you already clinch the first seed, I mean, there's no reason to even try. I think you just kind of get your wins where you have them, and then don't push for it.
I can see that happening as well. That's very likely. Let's say they clinch the 1 seed in week 15 or 16. They can choose to surrender their perfect season by then if it's still intact. That way, that being said, I can see them losing to Dallas, New Orleans, and New York in weeks 16 through 18. But I got to say, I think they will slip up before that just because, they're very talented. There's no denying that. But perfection is very, very rare. Only 2 teams have ever finished a regular season perfect in NFL history. So that being said, I think their first loss will come, I'm going to say week 14 at the New York Giants. That's my prediction.
I'm saying it's going to come 1 week earlier. I could see them losing to the Titans, kind of looking ahead to the Giants, because the Titans have not been a great team this season for the AFC South. You just it's just Derrick Henry left, Derrick Henry right. It's how you're looking to. You trade A.J. Brown away in the offseason. I think if you look ahead to the Giants, especially going to play in New York, you're going to lose to the Titans. I think the Titans could upset the Eagles.
Yes, and going into the season, I didn't expect Tennessee to live up to their hype and their expectation from last season, being the 1 seed in the AFC. Obviously, it didn't last long in the postseason. But you're right, Tennessee could easily pull off that upset. They're still a very, very talented team all around. And they had an incredible effort last night against Kansas City, which they blew in overtime.
Yeah. They fought Kansas City hard. They played them tough. I mean, it's to even keep with Kansas City still is something very hard to do. It's not easy to keep up with that Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce offense. That's able to sling the ball over the field, and that team has played better than I think most would expect. They proved me wrong.
Absolutely. I didn't think they were a playoff team going into the season, but they were shaping up to be one. And one very interesting takeaway from last night's game between Tennessee and Kansas City, Tennessee's QB Willis only attempted 16 passes the entire game. He only completed 5 of them. Meanwhile, for Patrick Mahomes, his final stats were 43 of 68.
That's insane. 68 passes. His arm's got to be tired.
Yeah, so compare the two quarterbacks, 16 attempts, 68 attempts. I learned that's the largest such margin in NFL history between two QBs in completion attempts.
That's
or
insane.
Pass attempts.
That's insane. I mean, I'm just going to beg the question. Do you think Tennessee just doesn't trust Malik Willis?
It's tough to say. I think Derrick Henry's definitely the face of that offense. We all know that. Malik Willis didn't necessarily have the greatest showing last night. But going forward, I don't see why they can't remain competitive. I mean, that whole team is pretty good. They're a solid team. And they can hang with big teams like Kansas City, as we saw.
I think they're still the team to win the AFC South after. I mean, that division is just a dumpster fire amongst anything. I mean, we thought other divisions would be worse. No, this is shaping up to be the worst division this season. We very well might likely see a losing, like a less than 500 team make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's only happened before, I want to say 3 times in NFL history. It could very well happen again this season.
I think the last time the team that did it last was the Lions a few years ago. It's been a while ago.
I want to say, of the teams I remember, Seattle did it in 2010, Carolina 2014, Washington football team in 2020.
Washington was the latest. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then this year it could be a team from the AFC South or from the NFC South, such as Tampa Bay.
Yeah. I think this is just shaping up to be one crazy NFL season.
Oh, to say the least. I mean, every team looks like they can beat each other.
Oh, exactly. And the NFC, just once again, the NFC East looks like the toughest division.
For sure. We're going to leave it at that for the moment. We're going to take another quick break, but stay tuned. Don't leave.
Use the very best of the best ingredients. Demerara sugar is the best that is. Very high quality fruits, berries. The milk we use is the best milk there is. That's why it makes our product stand by itself. I like to make yogurt because I like to eat yogurt. We've been doing this for ourselves for many years because it's a tradition in our family. And we want to have a product which would be very similar to French yogurt, but with our touch of uniqueness, linking our name, our product, with the reputation of the Made in Oklahoma Coalition was probably the best thing we have done as far as promoting our product.
You may have been to casinos at some point in your life, but do you really know the truth behind the game you're playing?
And the casinos were very polemic or very controversial when they came out. But the truth was, that's all the federal government gave us.
Casino is owned by the Chickasaw Nation and has roughly 600,000 square feet of dedicated gambling space, making it the world's largest casino. It contributed massively to the Chickasaw Nation, posting a net revenue of $1.4 billion for the fiscal year of 2017.
Welcome back to the Roundup. Let's go into college football now. We have a lot to discuss today.
Yeah, we do. And, we'll just get into it. The Cowboys dropped one to the Kansas Jayhawks, the mythical 2022 Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, just no Spencer Sanders, bad secondary. It just did not start well at all.
Not at all. And obviously we're on a bit of a skid right now. Our last 2 road games in Kansas have, simply put, not gone in our favor. That's a complete understatement. In fact, we've looked terrible out there.
Oh no, we've looked bad out in Kansas.
Yeah, our secondary right now is awful. And I want to say the loss against Kansas just this past weekend, we got to consider the loss of Spencer Sanders at quarterback, but the fact is we lost 48-0 to K-State with Spencer Sanders in. So we have two major flaws right now.
Oklahoma State really does, and it's the sense of it's really showing that without Spencer Sanders, this offense can't do anything, but playing with an injured Spencer Sanders is just as porous. You can't get anything going with him or without him, and I think that was kind of the big thing going into this season is can Spencer step up to that role? And I think before he got hurt, he was, and then he gets hurt, dealing with several other injuries. He's just kind of fallen apart.
Yes, it's safe to say we don't deserve to be in the top 25. We've fallen off big time. We were 9th 2 weeks ago. Yeah, our whole team has taken a hit.
We've fallen off kind of like OU did.
Oh yeah, not a good year for the Bedlam teams. No, not at all.
No, not at all. But teams that have also kind of, I wouldn't say fallen off, but kind of dropped. Tennessee getting beat by Georgia, which kind of a shocker that they lost by 14. I thought that game would have been closer. Bama loses again to LSU for now the second time this season after getting beat by Tennessee. I think they could get beat by Ole Miss again. And, then Clemson, who I thought was a bad team, who I'm surprised only dropped to 12, I think should have dropped to lower, probably like in the 20s. I just don't like Clemson this season.
Yeah, that's very true. It's safe to say the AP poll had a major shakeup this weekend after Alabama and LSU's thrilling ending. Let's go to that game for a second. If you're LSU's coach, are you going for 2 in that final play?
I wouldn't have, because I think they could have beaten them in just those, and when it gets to the 2-point conversion part. But sometimes you got to risk all to get all in that sense. And for Brian Kelly, I mean, what a gutsy call for your first year being an SEC coach. You've been coaching college football for a while now. It's kind of like you win or you lose. You kind of take what you can get. And, I mean, he pulled the trigger, but he got it. Him and his Tigers got it done.
Definitely a gutsy call. Honestly, I would have done the same as Kelly. I would have gone for it because the fact is LSU didn't have much to lose, even though they now sit in the driver's seat in the SEC West, obviously. At that point, they didn't have much to lose because you have a chance to knock off your rival and one of the best teams in the country, who's dominated college football the past 10, 15, 20-plus years. You have one play to do it. Trust your QB, trust your whole offense. And in order to be a successful coach, especially in the SEC, you got to take big risks like that.
Oh, no, and I totally agree with that. I mean, just there's not a whole lot that you can really combat. I mean, it's just, like you mentioned, you want to coach in the SEC, you got to take the risk, and that's one of them.
Absolutely. And Brian Kelly came there to lead LSU in the SEC, but to knock off Nick Saban.
And I would almost argue that they just knocked Alabama out of the playoff picture.
I'd like to say so, too. Alabama's now 10th. The only problem is, for those Alabama haters, Alabama may sneak into the SEC championship if LSU falls again.
Oh, yeah.
And Alabama could still win the SEC championship if they beat a team like Georgia or Tennessee.
Yeah, and now getting into the playoff, where do you think it ranks right now? Because we obviously know the rankings come out tomorrow. Who do you think's the 4 in right now?
As of now, I'd say UGA number 1. Obviously, the defending champs, they're undefeated. So I'm keeping them at number 1 until they show otherwise. And then in number 2, I'll go with Ohio State. Safe pick. They're undefeated as well. C.J. Stroud's having a good year. 3rd, that's tough. We've definitely had a shakeup. I'll go with Michigan for now. It'll be difficult. I don't see Michigan and Ohio State both making the playoff, but as of now, that's what I'd say. And then 4th, it comes down to TCU and Tennessee. As of now, I'd put TCU. Tennessee was the 1 seed just last week, but the fact is they're about to drop.
Yeah.
So I think TCU will run the table, and I said it last week, they're going to run the table and win the Big 12 undefeated, and I think they make the playoff.
I think that's also very likely for TCU, but I would switch up the two Michigan and Ohio State, just the way those games played last week. Michigan dominated, Ohio State struggled. I would put Michigan 2 and Ohio State 3.
All right. Playoff picture's certainly coming to shape. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
We're going to take another quick commercial break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I went to Oklahoma State University here in Stillwater in 99 to 2004. I've always felt like Stillwater needed more family-friendly things to do, and we have opened up AR Workshop. We do everything from knitting blankets that can be done in a 3-hour class. We create doormats and porch signs, the Christmas wreaths with our yarn that we use for the blankets. We also do, we just started a new project for gnomes. We've done pumpkins during the fall, but our big thing that we do here are interior signs. Our designs are extremely unique too in our workshop. Customers come in, everything is here for them to do. They create everything. They can be as hands-on as they want. They came in here to relax and have fun, and that they are proud of their project that they've made.
Well, how I got started was my daughter said, "Mama, why don't we rent a booth at the Quarter Horse Show?" And it was very, very good because, you know, when you're giving your jelly away for free, people really do love it. But when you ask them to pay for it, then that's a true test. What makes my product so unique is the Scotch bonnet pepper. And the Scotch bonnet is the Jamaican pepper. And I had lived in Montego Bay, Jamaica for 4 years. So I learned how to handle the pepper and how to cook with it. I always say, you don't do this on your own. I mean, you have so many people that help you along the way. For me and for many of us, that's my name on that jar, and it better be good.
Welcome back to the Roundup. Let's continue our discussion briefly on college football. In a couple weeks, obviously, the Big 12 Championship's coming up. Obviously, TCU is the major front runner right now, as they sit at 9-0. Who do you think's making that second spot? We have a wide range of teams who currently sit at 6-3.
It's crazy to me that Texas is still in this conversation, even after losing to Oklahoma State. Like they're still holding on. They're currently second in the Big 12. If Texas wins out, they're in. But they still have to play Baylor, Kansas, and TCU, who they play next week. You know, they have the number one team in the conference. But it's crazier to me that Kansas still has a shot to get in that scenario. Because if Kansas runs the table and they just have things fall their way, Kansas is right there back in it.
Imagine that. They are officially bowl eligible for the first time since 2008.
Yeah.
We were all hyped about them making the top 25 at 5-0. They lost 3 in a row. They kind of slid a bit, but they're now back in contention, and it's very likely they might make the Big 12 championship for all we know.
And they also have the easiest schedule because Texas Tech, I mean, besides them playing Kansas State and Texas, I would still say they have almost the easier path to get to the Big 12 championship as long as things just fall their way and they handle their business.
Indeed. I do think TCU, regardless of who they face, will come out on top. They are, without question, the hottest team and the best team right now.
They're finding ways to win. They're just winning in dominant fashion. They're looking like a top 4 team right now in the country, in my opinion.
For sure. Like I said multiple times, I wouldn't be surprised to see them ultimately make the playoff.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
For sure. Let's switch over to the NBA now. One major team to discuss, obviously, as always, Golden State Warriors, defending champs. The dynasty's back. However, they've started their season on a bit of a rocky note. They're now 3-7 after being swept in a 5-game road trip.
That's
Your
tough.
thoughts?
That's just tough. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, you got to go out there and handle business, and they're not doing it. Teams are just beating them. I haven't even been able to catch up with the NBA this season. So who have they played in their last 5?
They played a couple of teams in the Southeast. I know they played Miami. They played Orlando. I don't remember exactly their games in order, but they played a couple of teams on the East Coast, and teams they obviously could have beaten. They're easy wins. But
Yeah.
they've just they haven't been able to get it done.
Yeah, I just got it pulled up. They lost to the Pelicans, the Magic, the Heat, the Pistons, the Hornets, all. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like you lose to the Hornets, the Pistons, which the Pistons I think are going to be okay this season. I don't think they're going to get into the playoffs, but they're going to be competitive. Miami's always going to be competitive with that Jimmy Butler-led dog mentality team. I think the Magic was their second win overall, that was the Magic's second win over Golden State, or like their second total win this season. I think that's insane.
Yeah, like we said, they've lost to a bunch of teams that were in easily winnable games for the Warriors, of all teams. I mean, come on. They should have won those games. I mean, obviously the season's very, very early, but is this something to be concerned about? That's what a lot of NBA fans are going to be wondering.
I would say no. It's still early on. I mean, we just mentioned they're 3-7. That's only 10 games into an 82-game season. You have plenty of time to recoup and recover and straighten things out.
I would have to agree. I predicted last week Golden State would make the finals again. I'm picking them from now on until they show otherwise and their dynasty starts falling apart. We thought it did a couple years ago, but clearly not.
Clearly not.
So I'm still picking them. If I'm a Warriors fan, I still have high hopes. I still have high expectations. Obviously, a rocky start will not dictate the rest of your season, how it goes. But at the end, I'm going to say the same thing as you. I think they'll rebound.
Oh, yeah. We saw it with Boston last season. I mean, Boston was one of the worst teams in the East before the All-Star break. Then after that, they got to the finals.
That is true. We've seen it before. Why can't we see it again?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, how about the Milwaukee Bucks? Currently 9-0, the only unbeaten team left. How about Giannis popping off?
Giannis is just an animal. That's 6'11", 240, I believe. He's just so hard to stop. How do you stop that? He's able to go over you, through you. He's just a dominant player. You can't stop that.
Yeah, you can't. There's no way to. He's just so dominant. He's my early pick to win the MVP again. He's third overall.
I would agree. I don't see anybody else competing with him except for Luka. Luka's kind of having his own season. And it's hard to compete, though, with those two guys.
Absolutely. That could be an epic face-to-face or head-to-head match between Doncic and Antetokounmpo. Two very likely MVP candidates, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right, how about another recently surging squad, that being the Cavaliers, led by Donovan Mitchell?
I mean, I'm impressed. I'm really impressed that this squad is doing as well as they are. It's something that I was really not expecting. At the beginning of the season, even before everything happened, I was like, this team is a 6th seed at best, and now they're blowing me away thinking this team could finish top 3 in the East.
Yeah, they're now 8-1 after defeating the LA Lakers on the road last night.
And, let's get into that Lakers team. What can they do to improve?
Honestly, in a nutshell, they're off to a terrible start. I don't think they're a playoff team. LeBron's aging. Westbrook's not the same as he once was. Anthony Davis, not in his usual form. I don't see them going very far this season.
I don't either. I think after this season, it's time for LeBron to put him up. He needs to retire after the season.
We'll see. We'll have to keep an eye on that for the rest of the season. That'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. That's a wrap for today's show. Thank you for tuning in as always. We'll see you next week. I'm Griff McClellan. Have a great night, and of course, go Pokes.
My name is James Ramidi. Fired Up Stilly is the name of the business, and I'm one of the owners. We all three met, the three owners, working as employees at a similar place like this. What I hope for is for everybody to feel welcome, like family. Not only do I want students to feel welcome to come here and study and use our free Wi-Fi, but also I want adults and families to be able to come in. We've built a connection with a lot of people, and Stillwater's a big community, so we just want to invite everybody to be able to eventually make their way through our doors. Well, definitely the teas, I would say. Most people fall in love with them. They just got a great amount of energy, gets you going through your day, and it just kickstarts you to get, everything you need to done. For myself, it would just have to be, being the owner, owning something that, is able to impact other people's lives, and, the way we can affect our community is something that I really have always wanted to do. We love our clients and our customers that come through every day, and we enjoy getting to know them.
Our state is one of the most beautiful and unique states in the USA. With diverse geographies, the historic Route 66, unforgettable restaurants, and some of the greatest people on the planet. With so much to see and so much to do, living in Oklahoma means one of the best vacation spots is right in our own backyard. Doesn't this story need to be told? As filmmakers and photographers based right here in Oklahoma, we thought so. And hey, who doesn't like a good road trip? So, we packed up our cameras, teamed up with Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell and the Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Department, and that's how this series was born. We want to